She stalked my family for 6 years. What we found on her laptop will haunt you. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. The whole thing I'm about to tell you stretched across years and only wrapped up not long ago. It touched almost everyone who matters to me, and honestly, we're still living with the aftershocks, and probably will be for the rest of our lives. I want to lay it out so folks can see how something that looks harmless at first can spin way out of control. Because it's long, I'm likely going to break it into a few chunks. First, here's the setup. My brother, let's call him Ethan, has always been my closest friend. He's the kindest, most genuine guy I've ever known, the sort of person people take to right away. Even with that, he hasn't dated a ton. Part of it, I think, is he's an all-or-nothing type. When he falls hard and without looking. Blessing and curse, you know? Anyway, the few girlfriends he's had, I knew pretty well even though I'm nearly 8 years younger. Most of them were decent, normal, easygoing girls, aside from a couple outliers. We figured he'd eventually land with some great, long-term girlfriend once he hit adulthood. We had no idea we'd spend 6 years walking through a private hell with him, dragging our family and close friends along, because of one person. I'll call her Brittany. I first met Brittany when I was 11, Ethan was 19, and Brittany was 17 and about to graduate. It caught me off guard that he introduced her right away as his girlfriend. None of us, including my parents, had even heard her name before. But she came off warm and polite. She was an honor roll kid and flat-out beautiful. I admired her immediately. For the first year, nothing seemed off. Brittany was cheerful, friendly, always full of stories. She and I got close pretty fast. She made an effort with me, and it felt like gaining an older sister. We liked the same stuff, conversation was easy, and even though I was a kid, I was pretty mature for my age and she was inviting. About halfway through year 2, we started spotting little things, quirks that didn't sit right. If someone was talking to Ethan and she wasn't part of it, she'd wedge herself in, sit closer, laugh louder than the joke deserved, or call him away. If a relative asked Ethan about college plans or his future, she'd squirm and sometimes blurt out lines like, "Hope you've got it all mapped out, because I'm going wherever you go." We'd chuckle it off, figuring she just loved Ethan and leaned protective. We still liked her and believed in their relationship. Looking back, we were blind. One night, Ethan came home late from a party. I was 13, he was just about to turn 21. He walked in while our parents were asleep and I was still on the couch. He had that look, something was wrong. I asked what happened, followed him into the kitchen, and noticed a big welt on his cheek. "What happened to your face?" I said. "I got in a fight." "It's fine," he replied. That made no sense. Ethan fighting is like a cat loving bath time. "Over what?" I asked. "Brittany," he said, and went to his room. Driving me to a soccer game the next morning, I pushed again. He kept quiet for a bit, then said, "Brittany's kind of weird." "How?" I asked. "I don't know. She likes to start things," he said. Turned out Brittany was a compulsive liar. Looking back, all those wild stories about trips and experiences didn't hold water. At that party, she told Ethan a guy had tried to rape her. Ethan confronted him, like any decent man would, and the guy said, "I don't even know her." A fight broke out over the accusation. On the ride home, Brittany backpedaled and told Ethan he must have misunderstood. Nothing like that had happened. That lie blew a crater in their relationship, and Ethan broke up with her. Several weeks later, Brittany texted me asking if I wanted to go shopping. We'd had a good rapport, so I agreed. Even though my parents thought it was odd a 20-year-old wanted to hang out with her ex's 14-year-old brother. At first, the day was normal, catching up on life, asking about family and Ethan. Then the conversation swerved. She told me she'd had a sexually traumatic childhood and said that's why she lied sometimes, but also insisted Ethan was the liar and she had dumped him for that reason. She ping-ponged from casual chatter to deeply personal, uncomfortable topics. Out of nowhere, she described in detail a lesbian experience she'd had after the breakup and told me I should try that sort of thing when I was older. I froze up. She noticed, apologized, and said she just loved Ethan and liked being my friend, and that's why she'd been acting out. I told her I liked being her friend too, and I understood. That was a mistake. The late-night calls started. At first, one call at 10 p.m., sobbing about missing Ethan and needing him back. Then it became nightly, later and later, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., hysterical crying, gasping, desperate. I felt sorry for her, so I kept answering. One call was different. No crying. No drama. I picked up at about 1:30 a.m. to a flat, monotone Brittany. Tell your brother I'm going to slit my FING throat tonight. Click. I went numb. I'd never dealt with anything like that. I texted her over and over. Are you okay? Don't do anything. Please. I panicked and felt responsible because she'd told me. I told Ethan the next day. He said he'd swing by her place to check on her. A week later, Brittany walked into our house on Ethan's arm like nothing had happened. They were back together. She smiled at me, never mentioned the calls. A month later, things blew up again. I got home from school and my entire family was in the living room. Sit down, they said. I thought someone had died. My mom said, your brother told us how you're feeling. I had no clue what they meant. Feeling? I said. Ethan looked at me with pity. Brittany told me she wasn't the one calling you. You called her, and you're the one who's been struggling. What? No. She called me every night for 2 weeks, crying about wanting you back. That's not what she said, he answered. She said you were calling her with your problems, and she didn't know how to help. I was furious, not just because she lied, but because my own family believed her enough to set up an intervention. I pulled out my phone, texts, voicemails, call logs. That put an end to that story. I wanted nothing more to do with her. Ethan broke up with her again. She called hundreds of times, spammed him with messages, dropped by our house with baked goods and apologies. We ignored it. Eventually, she vanished, and we didn't hear from her for almost a year. On my last day of class before winter break my sophomore year, I walked outside and got hit with a nasty surprise. Brittany was pacing out front, chewing her nails and scratching her scalp. Her face looked hollow, eyes bagged. I barely recognized her. I cut across the lawn with my friend Emily to avoid her, but she spotted me and hustled over with her arms out for a hug. I stopped short. You're mad at me? She asked. What are you doing here? I said. She chuckled under her breath. I wanted to apologize for whatever your brother told you. I'm sick, Jake. She used a nickname only Ethan called me. I know. Please don't talk to me anymore, I said, starting toward the parking lot where Ethan waited. She grabbed my shoulder. I pulled away. I'm serious. Leave us alone. You need help, Brittany. She started crying. I turned and walked. Ethan pulled up to the front and opened the door. Is that freaking Brittany? He asked, checking his mirror. Yeah. I don't know what she's on, but she's not right. That night around 1 a.m., someone knocked. My dad peeked through the peephole. Oh, what the? I think it's Brittany. Don't open it, Ethan said. She's probably messed up. Mom wanted to call the police, but Dad and Ethan said to wait her out. She started pounding harder, and we heard her wailing. I hear you. Let me in. Ethan looked from his window. She's got a baseball bat. I looked from the den. She was like a horror movie extra. Barefoot, grimy dress, hair hacked short and half twisted into a loose bun. Black makeup smeared down her cheeks. She looked thinner than earlier, and she swung a metal bat while staggering around our yard. I'm calling the police. She's drunk, Mom said. No, she'll leave, Dad said, underestimating. Honestly, it was so bizarre we were half watching the scene like a true crime episode until she froze. She stared blankly up at the second-floor windows, cocking her head side to side, licking her lips. What's she on, heroin? Dad asked. Brittany shifted from laughter to sobbing to shouting, animal sounds. We called her phone, then her mom's, trying to get her to leave. Eventually, the noise stopped. We checked the windows. She was gone. We sat there stunned. Dad gave a shaky laugh and a head shake. Mom shook her head too, pity on her face. But I was scared. No one, except maybe Ethan, had watched how quickly she slid from clingy to small lies to pathological lies to full-tilt manic. We figured that had to be the worst of it. She'd seen we weren't giving in, so maybe she'd fade out. We couldn't have been more wrong. I said I'd do a part 2, maybe 3, because the worst parts came in those last 2 years. Update 1. Obsessed ex keeps harassing my family. Hey again. This is the second part of what I've gone through because of someone who wasn't well. In part 1, I described how my family, and me, first got tangled up with my brother's girlfriend, Brittany. I explained how small insecurity flags and repeated lies turned into manic, violent, aggressive outbursts. Part 1 covered the first 4 years. I was 11 through 15 in those events. Part 2 starts at the beginning of my junior year. After the winter blow-up at our house, Brittany stopped showing up in person, but she never really left. Every one of us got daily calls and texts, from apologetic and stable to totally unhinged and threatening. For months, I wanted the lights on when I slept. I pictured her climbing our back fence and appearing at my window with that same empty, crazed look. We finally changed our numbers and blocked her everywhere we could. She still had the landline. That's where she left the worst messages. One stuck with me. It made us realize how unstable and potentially dangerous she was. We got home from an early indoor soccer game one February morning in 2015, and Ethan said, "Come to the kitchen. You have to hear the new crazy." First message, about 30 seconds, came in around 12:30 a.m. Brittany sounded mildly irritated and demanded we return a batch of cookies she'd brought to a 4th of July party years earlier. Said she didn't want us to have them anymore. We exchanged amused looks at how ridiculous that was. Mom started to walk away, smiling. Ethan said, "That's not the crazy one." He played the 3 a.m. message. At first, it was just that empty room hiss, white noise. Then, in this deep, animal snarl, she screamed, "Stop f***ing playing with me. You're gonna get it." The call ended. We all jumped. Mom said, "We should call the police. They need to know. She isn't all there, and who knows what she'll do." Dad decided we'd make a report if she did anything physical again. Ethan insisted she was all talk. I didn't feel safe anymore. I'd never seen a person behave like that, only in movies. The anxiety wired me tight, and I had no idea what I'd do if she showed again. After we disconnected the landline, the personal calls stopped. We didn't hear from her directly, but mutual friends told Ethan she kept pinging them for his new number. Thankfully, they didn't hand it over. Right before summer, Brittany disappeared completely. No messages, no sightings. Then Ethan got an email from Brittany's mom. She said they'd moved Brittany to the East Coast for treatment for a substance problem. Brittany's mother filled in some blanks. Turns out she'd thought Ethan and Brittany were still together and had had no idea what had gone down. She said Brittany had always been a white liar, weaving stories that didn't make sense, blaming others when caught, arguing against facts. "I don't think she ever thought anything she did was wrong," she told Ethan. And she wasn't raised that way. The problems were always there, just hiding underneath a smart, pretty exterior. She fooled us, and maybe herself. Life settled. I still looked over my shoulder sometimes, but I was getting ready for 11th grade. Ethan started a new career and began dating someone new, the daughter of a close family friend he'd grown up with. We tried to let Brittany fade from mind. Around then, I kept noticing a certain car. You know how a random car gets stuck in your brain once you've noticed it? I'd spot it at a stoplight, or rolling past a restaurant window. I didn't think much of it, until I saw it parked in our neighborhood and thought, "That's that same car. Why is it here?" We live in an older, smaller neighborhood where people stick around. New folks are rare. An unfamiliar car stood out. I pointed it out to Ethan, who said he'd seen it a few times too. I told myself I was being paranoid. A few months into school, I was busy with a job in theater. One slow afternoon at work, I noticed someone lingering outside our front doors. I assumed they were deciding where to eat. The place next door is popular. They left, so I stepped out to bust the patio and saw the same person walking down the strip. Inside again, I watched them pass back and forth a few more times. I felt uneasy, but got back to work. I took time off for a play, and by opening night I was so exhausted I couldn't have noticed a freight train. My family came opening night, the 4th show, and closing night. Leaving the 4th show, my stomach dropped. That same car sat in the lot, a few rows from my parents' car. I didn't recognize it from the school or any castmate. "What does Brittany drive?" I asked Ethan. "Brittany? I don't know. Why?" "That car keeps showing up wherever we are." A couple days later, I got my answer. After closing night bows, I headed to the lobby to hug my folks and Ethan, and saw they looked rattled. "What happened?" I asked. Brittany was here," Ethan said. The color drained from my face. She'd been watching me for 2 hours without me knowing she was even in the same city, never mind the same building. "Did she leave?" I asked. "Not sure. Don't worry about it," he said. We headed outside. There she was, standing near a hallway, eyes glued to her phone. We tried to blow past. From a distance, makeup and clothes made her look almost like the old Brittany, but when she looked up, I saw the same vacant, animal stare. Anger flashed across her face. "Hey, wait a minute," she called, following behind us. At the front, Ethan stopped while we kept walking. "You need to stop," I heard him say. We got to our car and watched them talk from a distance. I wanted to leave. Mom and I climbed in. Dad stood outside with his eye on things. Brittany's voice rose. Ethan walked toward his car. She flashed a fake smile, waved, shouted some sing-song goodbye, then stormed off to her vehicle. Ethan spoke with Dad, then left after Brittany peeled out, driving the same car I'd been seeing for weeks. "Still as crazy as ever," Dad said, starting the engine. "We may need to call the cops." We lived close by, but I wanted Dad to hurry. Every headlight behind us felt like a hand on my neck. Then we hit a four-way in our neighborhood, and there she was, at the cross street. "Dad, that's her." He went straight. She turned and fell in behind us. "Dad, she's following us." "Call 911. Dad told Mom, steady but firm. I ducked down in the back seat while Dad started making a series of turns. "I'm going to loop a few blocks. If she stays on us, we'll know," he said. Mom worked with the dispatcher, but our streets are poorly lit and hard to name in the dark. I could hear Mom and Dad snapping at each other, and I could feel the fear through Dad's calm voice. Then the inside of our car flooded with light. She'd flipped on her brights, bumper nearly kissing ours. Dad tipped his mirror to block the glare and pressed the gas. After a few more turns, the light fell away. The engine behind us faded. She was gone. We got home 10 minutes later and lit up the house like a stadium. Dad checked closets, the yard, the side gate, carrying his handgun. "She's been watching me and Ethan," I said, almost hysterical. All those car sightings weren't random. She knew our schedules. She came to my shows, probably every night my family did. She'd followed me around town. She'd cruised our neighborhood. She lingered outside my job. The threats weren't theory anymore. Brittany didn't care about lines, if she ever had. We were neck deep in a nightmare. We were not safe. She'd gone away to treat one disease and came back feeding another. She turned into our personal terrorist, capable of tearing our daily life to pieces, and she'd already started. It's hard to explain the fear of trying to fall asleep, knowing something you can't see is out there waiting. I used to think monsters were make-believe. Turns out a person can be worse. Even then, we were just at the halfway mark of year 5. Things were still heating up. Update 2. The harassment finally breaks open. Hi again. This will be the last part of the Brittany story. Parts 1 and 2 lay the groundwork. This covers the final year and a half. We're stronger now, but still healing. After I told Ethan what Brittany had done the night of my show, he finally opened up about their relationship. She'd transferred into his high school as a sophomore during his senior year. She turned heads, pretty and, at first glance, reserved. But his female friends said she pushed hard to make friends and liked to brag that her family came from some ultra-rich part of Texas, so exclusive it didn't have a name. Plenty of people pegged her as off, snobby, and strange. Years later, she walked into Ethan's workplace. She seemed more mature. He took her out once, and she immediately wanted to lock it down. He thought it was forward, but she spoke elegantly, was sweet, and gorgeous. He went with it. Within weeks, he noticed red flags. Brittany was profoundly insecure, constantly asking if he still had feelings for her, if he was mad, if he still found her attractive. That insecurity twisted into something else. Unsolicited nude photos in the middle of the day with messages asking if he still liked her body. If he went a stretch without calling her beautiful, she'd point it out. Push back even a little, and she'd melt down and accuse him of not loving her. Things eased for a while. Then near the end of year 2, the narcissism showed. She talked down his exes and female friends, bragging that she was better looking. She refused to attend certain family events, my birthday dinner, even our aunt's funeral, because she wouldn't know anyone and would have no one to talk to. She called herself a princess and wanted constant attention. She fought Ethan over him seeing his friends without her. She couldn't understand why he'd want to be with anyone else. She was certain she'd be famous one day and marry Ethan. I couldn't understand why a smart, kind, good-looking guy like my brother was still with someone who behaved like that. But any time he thought about ending it, she threatened suicide. He felt trapped, scared she'd actually do it. He figured she might be bluffing, until he found a stash of prescription bottles at her place. She said they were antidepressants after her brother died. Ethan later found out that brother didn't exist. Soon she started resenting Ethan for spending time with family unless she was invited. She fixated a lot of that anger on me. Once, she called me a slut, then spun a story that my mom must have had an affair because I was so ugly, and Ethan wasn't, so I must not be my dad's kid. That was Ethan's line. He decided he'd end it even if she threatened herself. That context made later events worse. Her inviting me to hang out, the over-the-line phone calls, showing up at my school. All of it felt more sinister, not less. I barely slept in the weeks after the car chase. Ethan, who lived across town, was around more, calls, visits. I think he was as uneasy as I was. When I did sleep, I'd jolt awake from nightmares. Girls with axes, women in gowns standing at the foot of my bed. Early December 2015, we had a stormy, windy night. I cracked my second-floor window to the safety latch to get the cold air and the sound of rain. Dad had cut a stick to wedge in there for extra security, and I set the heavy blackout curtain so the small opening could still breathe. Sometime after midnight, I woke to a faint sound on the roof outside. Our house is split-level. Bedrooms are the highest point, but with the living room and garage roofs, a determined person could climb up if they knew the layout. I shook it off, probably branches. I rolled over to face the wall. Not 2 seconds later, my entire room exploded with white light. I shot up, paralyzed, limbs buzzing like they were floating. A second flash turned everything into black silhouettes again. I tore out of bed and sprinted down the hallway screaming, which scared me as much as whatever I'd seen. Dad burst from his room and grabbed my shoulders. "What is it?" "Someone's taking pictures of me through my window," I said. They checked the roof and yard, found nothing. Mom asked the questions you'd expect. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming? Could it have been lightning?" There was no thunder, and the light looked nothing like lightning. I've seen enough cell phone flashes to know that color of white. I don't know if they believed me then. Eventually, I'd get proof that would wipe the doubt away. In January 2016, Ethan adopted a Chesapeake Bay Retriever pup he named Rocky. 2 months old, one eye gold and the other green. A white hourglass on his chest and a white sock on his left front paw. Distinctive and adorable. Rocky became Ethan's little shadow, next to his fiancée, Samantha. Rocky would end up being the key that broke everything open. The holidays and Ethan's engagement lifted us. Samantha's great, smart, kind, and we'd known her family forever. Ethan was about to finish the police academy. Brittany felt like ancient history. For the first time in a long while, we felt safe. That didn't last. A month or so later, Samantha let Rocky out back for a few minutes. When she went to bring him in, he was gone. She panicked, searched the neighborhood, called me, picked me up, and we combed the creek behind their place. Nothing. When we pulled back up, Rocky sat on the front porch, happy as ever but missing his collar. We were relieved, and we assumed he squeezed through a small gap in the side gate. What nagged me was he had no grass or burrs stuck in his fur. A few weeks later, Ethan and Samantha planned a weekend away, and I said I'd watch Rocky. Friday they dropped him off. He and our older lab, Buddy, wore each other out in the yard. Saturday night around 8, Dad let both dogs outside. He and Mom were watching TV. Buddy barked, unusual for him, and came scratching to get in, then barked at Dad. Dad called for Rocky. No response. He grabbed a flashlight, checked the bushes, the pool, every corner of the yard. Mom joined him, sweeping the property. When I got home, they'd already checked the front and sides. I told them Rocky had slipped out once before, so we canvassed the neighborhood by car, calling his name and pulling a couple neighbors into the search. As we drove, I couldn't get past the idea that a well-behaved puppy had suddenly become an escape artist. Our fences are high and solid. Dad replaced the side runs a few summers ago. We didn't find him. I hoped he'd show up on the porch again. He didn't. I told Ethan on Sunday. We spent the day hitting shelters, the pound, vet offices, even checking the roadside. Nothing. Ethan was crushed. We made flyers. A couple weeks later, Dad was mowing and came in with something in his hand. He set it on the table. "What's that?" I asked. "Rocky's collar. Found it in the front yard. Almost ran over it," he said. "Take it to your brother." It was Rocky's first collar, the one he'd lost the day he got out at Ethan's place. I called Samantha to ask if they'd found it back then. They hadn't. They bought a new one. That's when it clicked. Someone had taken Rocky, twice. I told Ethan, Samantha, and my parents. It wasn't a leap. It connected to everything else. We took it to the police to add to the case file on Brittany. I also told them about the window flashes. Like before, they said there wasn't enough to act on. We walked out frustrated, scared, and tired. A few weeks later, April 2016, everything changed. By pure dumb luck, Samantha was window shopping with her mom in a small town 45 minutes away. They noticed a car parked on the street with a puppy inside. It was a warm day, so they went to check. Samantha looked through the glass and knew. Those eyes, that chest marking. And he started whining when she said his name. She called the police, called Ethan, and sat on the trunk to wait. The officers arrived just as the owner returned. The girl got rattled quick. Police lights and Samantha's accusation will do that. She wasn't Brittany. She was actually helpful. She said she'd bought the dog a few days earlier off an online ad. The seller had been weird and in a hurry, the pup skinny, the price too low. The seller said she didn't want this stupid dog, that her boyfriend bought the wrong kind. She liked small dogs. The meetup took place at an apartment complex nearby, though the buyer didn't remember the unit. Samantha told the police our situation and gave them Brittany's name. They ran it and found she lived in that complex with 2 roommates. Detectives interviewed the roommates the next day. Brittany wasn't home. Roommates said they rarely saw her. Her door was always locked. She said she had a job, but they never saw her leave for work. Her mom came by often to check on her and, get this, drop off her rent. When the roommates did talk to Brittany, she ping-ponged between, I love my ex and his family, and they all deserve to die and are going to hell. With the buyer's statement and the roommate's info, the police finally had enough for a search warrant. I don't know every detail of what they found, but what I do know turned my stomach. On Brittany's computer, hundreds and hundreds of photos. Ethan, me, our parents, Samantha, our cars, our houses, my school, Ethan's academy, Rocky, shots through our windows at night, pictures of us sleeping, social media grabs from trips, even Ethan's proposal photo. She'd photoshopped herself into some of them. Her room still had pictures of her with Ethan and our family. She'd kept Rocky in her closet for weeks on a towel with water and barely any food. Her search history, rape fantasies, violent porn, weapons research. That gave the police what they needed to arrest her. Brittany had been obsessively stalking us for more than 2 years. It was her snapping pictures through my window, her shadowing our cars around town, her waiting outside my job, her following us after the show. She watched Ethan drop Rocky at our house. She kept a journal, notes about us, our routines, and what she planned to do. We won't see it until trial. Ethan, me, Dad, the woman who bought Rocky, Brittany's roommates, several of Ethan's friends, and Brittany's mother are all set to testify. It will be the first time we've seen her face-to-face in months, and I'm scared. I'm also angry, furious, really, that someone so selfish and broken latched onto my brother and our family and tore at our safety, our sanity, and our trust. Every creak in the house, every strange face, every car tailing a little too close sends me straight back to that night. Her standing in our yard in that filthy dress, eyes empty, head tilted to the sky. My life turned into an actual horror story. Not a haunted house, not a masked killer, just a sick person with a shattered mind and a fixation she couldn't let go. I'm 17, and I know some people will read this and think it's a bad thriller plot. It isn't. We're healing. I'm healing. She didn't break us. I'm sharing this so anyone who's seen similar warning signs doesn't feel alone, and so you'll act early. Don't wait until it gets this bad. Understand how dangerous untreated instability can be. As the trial moves forward and we learn more, I might update this with what comes out in court. Thank you for sticking with my story. Getting it all down in words has been a relief after 6 years of feeling voiceless. I'm stronger now.